I'm Dr. Richard Hyduke, the teacher of this course. When I was growing up, my father was a U.S. Navy engineer. He served for 20 years, so being a military kid was formative on the early part of my life. For me, the military life meant moving frequently and living in interesting places. Some of my favorite places as a kid were Japan and Korea. We settled in Texas when my dad retired from the Navy. The job he took was in Houston, so I did my last years of high school in the Houston area and then went off to college. I did my undergraduate degree at a small liberal arts school in Central Texas, where I majored in history and minored in Greek and computer science. After finishing that initial degree, I went to seminary in Kentucky, pursuing a call to be a pastor. Since finishing my degree there, I have served as a pastor most of the past 30 years. I also took time to do my PhD in philosophical theology in California. Got my first opportunity to teach while living there, teaching some courses at Azusa Pacific University. I've since also taught as an adjunct at Northeast Texas Community College and for several years as full-time faculty at Wiley College, the home of the great debaters. My current full-time job is pastoring a United Methodist congregation in a small town between Houston and Dallas. I've been married since the mid-1980s and have 3 adult children, 2 of whom have worked their way through their own college experiences. My main motivation for teaching is that it's fun. Some of my teaching comes out of my knowledge and experience. Some of my teaching comes out of my ignorance. If you continue in higher education, you'll discover someday that the more you learn, the less you know. I'll say more about that later. Suffice it to say now, by teaching out of my ignorance, I gather with a group of fellow learners and see what we can learn together. The best starting point for most courses is the syllabus. A syllabus tells you about the particulars of the course itself, what it contains and requires, and how it fits into your experience of the institution as a whole. A fair amount of what you see in the syllabus will be very familiar, inasmuch as it lays out rules and procedures for being a successful student at Alvin College. Rules and procedures that are the same whatever course you're taking. The rest of the syllabus will tell you the goals, procedures, and methods peculiar to this class. When I was in college, we didn't have online classes. Back in those days, you can call it the previous millennium if you want me to feel old, you could take a traditional class, that is, a face-to-face with your teacher and classmates in a particular place and time, or a correspondence course done through the mail. Online classes have elements from both these types of classes. When it comes to technology, traditional classes are very simple. In the past few centuries, traditional classes have used technology as it develops. Printed books, cheap paper, pens, pencils, various forms of group visual presentation. I think here of slates, usually black, whiteboards, and forms of electronic projection. You've likely experienced all these features. Online courses differ from traditional classes and requiring more advanced technology from you, the student. To be successful in an online class, you need some sort of computer that is ready to hand, by which you can engage the material. On this device, you'll need the software necessary to access the material, usually a browser is sufficient, and to create your own work. A word processor is usually sufficient for that. You'll need the hardware required to access the Internet, and the accounts necessary to get into the Internet itself. Have you heard of Murphy's Law? In its basic form, it claims, if something can go wrong, it will. Pessimists take this as a long way and live in constant despair. I wouldn't encourage you to be pessimists, but I do encourage you to be realists. Your software and your hardware can fail. Computers, in my experience, have an uncanny ability to sense when you're in a hurry and to respond by slowing down, crashing, or failing to work altogether. Then there's the Internet itself. I've enjoyed using the Internet in one form or another since the 1980s, but I can't always use it when I want. Sometimes the system is down. Sometimes the network fails. Sometimes even the electricity fails. If you are going to be a realist with regard to Murphy's Law, you need to plan ahead. If you wait until the last minute to submit your work, chances are Mr. Murphy will pick that moment to show his face. By knowing about Murphy's Law and your own limitations in making the world's ways of working conform to our desires, we can plan ahead and schedule our work. Though this doesn't always work, it does most of the time. I like technology. That's one reason I like online classes. The main reason I like them, however, is a feature they share with correspondence courses. Online classes are usually, at least the way I do them, asynchronous. In a traditional class, the class members meet and do class at a set time and place. You know going in what the schedule is, and you conform to it, or suffer the consequences. Online classes have schedules too. Those are usually based around a week, taken as a whole, rather than hours and days. Our schedules will differ. We may never be online doing our work at the same time. Nonetheless, as in traditional classes, and unlike most old-style correspondence classes, we will be weekly engaging with our classmates, both faculty and fellow students. If you don't like technology or don't have access to it, an online course probably isn't for you. But there's an even greater roadblock for some. Online courses can take a higher degree of personal discipline than traditional courses, since we never see each other face-to-face. Since we have no time and place to meet in physical space, it's easy to slack off. Online courses require you to discipline yourself, to pace yourself, and to plan ahead. As an online course, most all your materials will be online. In the Alvin College Blackboard environment, it's to your advantage to explore the course materials at the very beginning and to keep up with the communications from me and from your classmates. This isn't just an online college course. It's also important to remember that it's a college course. If you're just beginning your college career, you will find this course more difficult, demanding than what you experienced in high school. The reading is demanding both in quantity and quality. I'll say more about the reading specific to the course later. You're paying Alvin College, which is in turn paying me, to teach this course to increase your knowledge. As a teacher, I have the duty to challenge and provoke you. If I do nothing more than stir the pot of what you already know, then I've cheated you out of your hard-earned money. I have a conviction, however, that students rise to a challenge. It's also an online college course. Like other courses, there's a structure to it. The structure serves to order our work and to get us somewhere. The where, in this case, is beginning to think like a philosopher. There are several elements to success in this course. Most of these elements are common to every other class you'll ever take, so I'm sure my list won't offer many surprises. If you want to succeed, you will engage with the material. Do the assigned work. Do the assigned work on time. Study for exams, and ask lots of questions. Let's take these one at a time. As a student, it's hard to get away from reading. Sure, there are some courses of study that are primarily hands-on, that will require less reading. But in a course in the humanities, and as a discipline, philosophy of all kinds finds its home in the humanities, it's hard to get away from reading. In this course, we'll be reading a couple of books, as well as a few items online. If you don't read, you'll be in trouble. Conversation is an important part of learning philosophy. We'll be making extensive use of the discussion board here in the Blackboard environment. It's a time to pose questions and answer questions. As an online class, we won't see each other face-to-face, so conversation will take place asynchronously on the board. It might be that the question you ask or the answer you give is just what a classmate needs to gain understanding. This is a 3-hour course. The agencies that accredit Alvin College and other American institutions of higher learning expect this to mean something across the board, from institution to institution. The assumed framework is that a 3-hour course meets for 3 hours of class time each week for 15 weeks, and that this face-to-face time is backed up by an additional 6 hours of study and preparation, 2 hours for each hour spent in class, making for 9 hours a week for 15 weeks, or 135 hours total. Obviously, as an online class, we won't have the face-to-face time, but the 135-hour total is still in the right ballpark. Some of you may find the work easy. You read fast, you gain comprehension easily, and you can write quickly, so you'll be able to do all the work well and in less than 135 hours. Others of you do at least one of these more slowly and will take more time. Some of you will fall in love with the material and want to spend long stretches contemplating it in detail, even pursuing other sources to dig deeper. You'll all need to work at managing your time, so you can not only have the time to do what's required for this class, but also for your other classes, and to have a life. As I've already mentioned, this course has 2 books. We'll also have some other material to engage with. There will be projects to complete, tests to take, Over the course of the whole term, it's not that much. If you try to cram it all into a week, even if the structure allowed it, you'd be in great pain and find success elusive. It's worth your while to study for exams. Now, it might be that you're a genius. You read or hear something and you remember it all for the first time. Even so, it's worth taking some time to study. You could find that you are missing something, or that even if you can mouth the words to an answer, you lack understanding. Study can also help you pre-think how you'll answer questions, so you won't have to take as much time online. Here are a few strategies you can use that will help you study. They'll also help you with your other work as well. Take notes. Take notes in your reading. Write down questions as they occur to you. If you own your books, write in the books. Mark them up. Since you take notes, use them. Go over them. Review them. And don't wait to review your notes until the night before an exam. Review continually. Repeated review over time is more likely to produce learning than cramming. One of the most important things you can do in this class is ask lots of questions. For most of you, this will be a hard class. It's difficult in at least two ways. First, it requires you to work. Most of you will care about your grades. You don't make a good grade simply as a result of the teacher liking you. Your grade depends on your work. Putting in the hours counts. Secondly, some of the material is conceptually difficult. Philosophers are notorious for being weird people. We question things ordinary people wouldn't think of questioning. Things that are obvious to everyone aren't obvious to us. You'll also be learning lots of new words in this course. Take it as an opportunity to build your vocabulary. Two factors that have a bearing on success, not only in this course, but in just about any endeavor, are ability and will. Ability has to do with the skills needed to do something. I have the ability, for example, to go to the gym and work out just about every day. I have a membership. I have a means of transportation. My body has the requisite physical capacities. I can do it. I have the ability. But do I have the will? When my alarm goes off in the morning, am I willing to get myself up and actually go to the gym? In my experience, self-discipline is a hugely important part of life. If I'm going to be a successful athlete, I will need to discipline myself. There are things I will need to say yes to and things I will need to say no to. Listening to a coach, doing what the coach says, those things will take me part of the way. But if I lack self-discipline, I will at best humor the coach and eventually drop out. Or consider music. If I want to be a musician, I have to submit to hours of practice, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. I have to say yes to my instrument and practice. I have to say no to the many other options that present themselves to me. Being a successful student also requires self-discipline. It's worth your while that this is a hard class. If it's too easy, if the bar is set low, it's not worth your money or time. But if it's hard, and you do what's necessary to succeed, it may raise your self-esteem. You'll find that you've tried something difficult and succeeded. If all you ever try are easy things, things where you're sure of success going in, you won't be growing very much. Sometimes we feel overloaded, inundated with information people tell us we need to know. It can be really tempting to think, in response, that we really don't need to know anything other than how to use Google or some other search engine. Why, we think, should we waste time cramming our heads full of information we may never need, and certainly don't need just yet? For some bits of knowledge, the "I'll look it up when I need it" works okay. Other times, it doesn't work so well. How do you think it works in this video? As your teacher, I have various responsibilities. I am responsible to you, my students. You are paying the institution piles of money, or going into debt, to take this class. You give your attention to this course for hours every week. I owe you a course that does you good, that adds to your stock of knowledge. and challenges and provokes you. I think it's very important that I respond to you in a timely and helpful manner. I'm also responsible to the college. After all, they have entrusted me to teach this course. They give me a paycheck for doing it. One way I show my responsibility to the college is to adhere as well as I can to all their procedures and policies. I'm also responsible to my discipline, in this case philosophy. I realize that in modern American academia, this is a rather quaint notion. It's common to think the only purpose of college education is to provide direct preparation for the world of work. As a dad, I hope my kids' college education has helped prepare them to be economically self-sufficient. But that's not all we're about. As one educated in and inculcated into the discipline of philosophy, I have a responsibility to bring you into that discipline as well. Chances are none of you will major in philosophy or pursue advanced degrees in the subject, but on the off chance that someone someday does, I want to make sure I have presented the discipline to you well. I even want to make it as attractive as possible. I also have a responsibility to myself. I need to maintain my personal integrity and sanity while teaching this course. While I put myself into teaching the course, it's not the whole of my life. It's for this reason that I will put limits on my responses to you. I'll be as quick as I can, but I don't plan to live online, watching each moment for whatever student response may come. I plan to get a full night's sleep each night. I take a day off each week. If I don't recognize boundaries for myself, I will degrade my health and do a disservice to you as well. Closely related to this, I also have a responsibility to my family. Most likely, you'll never be aware of my living this out except in my having boundaries. Finally, as a Christian, I take myself to be responsible to God. Someday a time will come when I have to give an account of how I've lived my life, what I've done with my resources, and how I've treated people. My life as a teacher is just one area in which I'll have to give an account. I'm not the only one with responsibilities. You as students also have responsibilities. It's worth your while to think about them as you do your work this semester and through your academic career. Many of your responsibilities are the same as mine. Others are a sort of mirror image. Some of you have families to whom you are responsible, maybe parents, spouses, or children. Taking time to invest in this and other classes takes you away from them. It's worth your while and theirs to take that into account. Also, some of you may be financially supported by a family member. If they're helping you afford this, it's worth your while to put your best effort into it for their sake, as well as your own. Finally, some of you are part of a student organization. At least some of these require you to maintain some particular GPA. If you slack off in this class and don't perform at the right level, it could impair your participation in that organization, adversely impacting others in that organization. You'll face several enemies in your academic career. One of the most persistent is procrastination. As an alternative strategy, I'd suggest what I call prospective laziness. Here's how they differ. Procrastination says, hey, I have plenty of time. I have other things I want to do now, so I'll put this other thing off until later. Prospective laziness says, hey, if I do this thing now, then I'll have more free time later to do other things I want to do. And if this is already done, I'll be free of anxiety. See which strategy works best for you. The etymology of the English word philosophy is love of wisdom. I'm sure that little tidbit will show up on a test somewhere. But knowing this Greek etymology only tells you so much. As it's developed over the millennia, the discipline of philosophy is not just the pursuit of wisdom. And to tell you the truth, sometime when it comes to engaging with wisdom, the discipline fails miserably. But it is even more the disciplined and systematic asking of questions about almost everything. We philosophers even ask questions about questions. At least half the time, we'll even answer your question with questions. I'm not going to tell you there's no such thing as a dumb question. Sure there are. But don't worry about it. We're here in this class as a community of friends. We ask questions to learn and to provoke one another to learning. I take asking questions to be a sign of intelligence. If you ask lots of questions, I'll be biased towards thinking you're an intelligent person, so ask away. Some students agonize over getting it right. Too much education, okay, let's not call it education, but time in school, has for them been a matter of learning right answers and regurgitating those answers on a test. Maybe you've had the experience I had when I was in school. You're taking a test. There's a section, or maybe the whole test, that is multiple choice. You come across a question that is vague or ambiguous, or the question seems perfectly clear, but none of the answers look right, or more than one answer looks right. Or maybe the questions quibble over such minor details you can't imagine anyone remembering the right answer. Chances are that you'll see some questions of the so-called objective sort, multiple choice, true-false, matching, in this class. There are some questions in philosophy, some basic knowledge, that can be dealt with that way. Almost all of that will be background knowledge, however. As far as real philosophy goes, that'll require more words. In this course, there will be sometimes more than one right answer. Occasionally, there may be a question that has no wrong answer. Well, at least not one I can easily identify as wrong. An example, I ask you, what is your favorite material object? If you answer, the front right hubcap of my Chevy truck, I will have no way of knowing whether that is in fact your favorite material object. In fact, I likely won't even know if you have a Chevy truck or know what a hubcap is. Some questions will have multiple right answers and multiple wrong answers. It's possible that your overall answer will be a sort of catalog of possible right ones and why they're right, and possible wrong ones and why they're wrong. For some of you, giving any answer at all will be a bold step into the darkness. You'll be taking what you consider to be a wild guess. I'd rather you give some answer, even an answer that you're totally unsure of, than no answer at all. Sometimes you'll hear, failure is not an option. Of course it's an option, if you're trying anything that matters. Every time an athlete competes, failure is an option. Anytime a musician goes on stage, failure is an option. Anytime you ask someone on a date, failure is an option. But if what you're aiming to accomplish is worthwhile, you'll take the risk. Failure is entirely normal. If you're trying things of value in life, you will fail. It's normal for successful people to fail. When we fail, we can learn what works and what doesn't. What harms you more is avoiding trying because you might fail. If you tell me Aristophanes wrote the Republic about this fellow Plato going around trying to sell fruitcake in Athens, well, I will mark you wrong. But being right or giving right answers isn't the most important thing. Some students give right answers, but not with understanding. Or they might give right answers and then, having taken the test, promptly forget everything. Sometimes a wrong answer can be highly interesting and provocative. As a teacher, I'll end up grading lots of work each term. I'd much rather have interesting and perceptive wrong answers to read than repetitive, trite right answers. Maybe I'm just perverse that way, but I'd rather have some fun with it. I think I've heard this line in every class I've ever taught. Everyone has their own opinion. On the one hand, this is trivially true. If you have an opinion about X, then it is your opinion about X. The opinions you have are yours. On the other hand, the claim is demonstrably false. Some of my opinions, though trivially true, didn't originate with me. They are opinions that I picked up from one of the herds I run with. It's an opinion I've uncritically or too quickly accepted. Use of this claim is usually a cop-out, a sign of intellectual laziness. I have some key values that are worth being aware of. First, I detest plagiarism. Fortunately, I'm on the same page as the college on this matter. Some of you will be tempted to plagiarize. It's so easy, after all. All you have to do is look up your question on Google or some other search engine, copy and paste. It's so easy. Don't do it. If all you want is a grade, take some other class. Or better yet, just make up your own and give yourself the highest grade. You're paying for this class. Some of you are even going into debt for it. Put yourself and your own work into it. When you are caught plagiarizing on an assignment, you will receive a 0 for that assignment. Some will be tempted to think that they won't get caught. Sometimes they won't, but it's not worth taking the chance. I also value proofreading. Now, I'm imperfect enough that I know perfection is really hard to come by. What I'm looking for is evidence that you take your work seriously enough that you've looked over it. You've checked the spelling. You've checked the punctuation. You pay attention to grammar and capitalization. You know punctuation is important, right? Perhaps you're aware of the difference between "let's eat Grandma" and "let's eat Grandma." If you don't know the difference, surely Grandma does. Writing in complete sentences is helpful in getting your ideas across clearly. Complete sentences have subjects and verbs. I like argument. Sure, we don't have the time and space to argue everything, but argument is way better than an invective and insult. Arguing in the philosophical arena is not the same as belligerence. Arguing means offering reasons for your claims, asking for reasons for the claims of others, and examining all those claims. Arguing with people can be a way of showing them respect. You take them seriously enough to engage with them that way, and engage with what they say. Agreeing with your teacher is not a requirement of this class. Feel free to challenge and argue with me, within the bounds of civil discourse, of course. Also, don't assume that just because I challenge you, it means I disagree with you. As a teacher, it's my job to challenge you. Agreeing with you is mostly irrelevant. Curiosity is a great thing. Of course, it may just ruin your life. When we're curious, we recognize that we don't know everything. Not knowing, that is, lacking certainty, can be very painful. Gaining a philosophical perspective, which is more my aim for you than getting you to memorize a list of facts, will expose and expand your ignorance. In my own life, the time I knew the most and felt most comfortable in my knowledge was probably my first semester of college. From that time forward, it's mostly downhill. My motto has become, the more I learn, the less I know. Now, part of this is that the more I learn, the bigger my world gets. As the world expands, and it expands faster than I can ever keep up with, the ratio of what I know to what I know there is to be known shrinks daily. Language is one of the greatest tools at our disposal. This course, and probably others you're taking, will be opportunities for you to build your vocabulary. Some of you will find it helpful to keep a glossary of the new words you learn. As you learn them, look for ways to use them. You can use them in conversation, in your writing, and in your imagination. In the last few years, there's been increasing dismay about the rising cost of textbooks. One response to this has been the elimination of books in college classes altogether. Instead of books, these classes rely on the internet and resources found there. Another increasingly popular response has been the development of open education resources, OER. These resources may have an online format, but also often have low-cost print options. In this class, we will be using real books, not textbooks. In this case, by textbook, I mean a book specifically designed to be used in a classroom setting. Real books, on the other hand, are written for broader audiences. They also are expressions of real philosophy. The modern approach to teaching ethics tends to take one of several approaches. Most commonly, courses in ethics take a theoretical approach. There are several dominant theories of ethics, and it's common to devote a chapter or section to each one. A second approach to ethics is to look at the discipline through the ethical problems or dilemmas that are common. The author or teacher will walk through how each theory deals with the problems. A third approach is a historical approach. Using this method, the class looks at how ethics have changed from the beginning. My approach will include some elements of each of these, but is fundamentally different. First, we're not using a traditional textbook. By using real books, this course will be less systematic than others. Those in charge of structuring college curricula like to require students to take a course in ethics. It seems that the assumption is that by studying ethics, one is more likely to become ethical. I don't give much credence to that, at least as ethics courses are commonly structured. So, to use a common metaphor, instead of talking about a pool and pointing at its various features. I'm just going to throw you into the deep end so you can learn to swim. A big advantage of the real books we'll be using is that they are very economical. I don't know what the campus bookstore will offer them for, but if you use a major online bookstore, you can get both, new or used, pretty cheaply. There is also some chance that as real books, you might find enough value in them that you'll want to keep them.